Joe Biden has no business being president today. If he can't run, he can't serve. And if he can't serve, it has to have been clear to many people that he couldn't serve for a very long time. And that is a historic scandal of epic proportions. What are we doing? Like, this man is not president. Who is president? Like, we either we're a democracy and we're owed the answers to such questions, or we're not a democracy. And who could argue, given the fact set that you and I have just covered, that we're a democracy today?
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for July 29th through August 5th, 2024, while supplies last. First, we feature Dealer's Choice Constitutional Silver Dimes, quarters, and half dollars at $2.50 over spot per ounce. We also have 1 ounce gold backdated Canadian maples at $65 over spot. Next, we have a limited quantity of 1 ounce silver full-color Trump Fight for America bars at $6 over spot. They come 22 a sheet and so have a minimum order of 20. And finally, we have 1 10th-ounce gold backdated American Eagles at $39 over melt per coin. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah K. Johnson with Liberty and Finance. And back with us today is our good friend, the green chicken, Doomberg, from Doomberg.com. Doomberg, thank you so much for joining us today.
Elijah, great to be back with you.
Well, it's great to have the number one paid financial contributor of Substack on the channel here. I did want to discuss what we're seeing politically. Over the last 3 weeks, it seems like everything in the U.S. is kind of turned upside down. First, we had the attempted assassination of Trump, and then we had obviously Biden stepping aside, not running for re-election. Kamala Harris taking the torch there. So, your perspective on that? It seemed like we were really heading towards a second Trump presidency. Now, a lot of that seems to be up in the air now, where it's pretty much a tied race. Your perspective on the whole political situation right now, and I guess the next question, we'll get into how that will impact energy and the economy. But first, just kind of what we've experienced over the last few weeks.
The last few weeks have been historic and tragic and disturbing. And I don't feel like the country has fully come to grips with what has transpired. We'd start obviously with the assassination attempt, which we had characterized on a previous podcast appearance with our friend Grant Williams as the most predictable political development of the year. I think everybody kind of assumed in the back of their minds that it was a distinct possibility, given the level of vitriol in the public discourse around politics these days, that somebody who may have been sort of convinced by such vitriol to take a shot at either candidate, and heaven forbid if it happens, the other way around. So we were very disturbed by both the event in Butler and much of the reaction to it, including a disturbingly high number of people bemoaning the miss on social media, which is, for a variety of reasons, this is a deeply unethical thing to say, but also a dangerous thing to say, and a naive thing to say, because the people who were saying it were unaware of the violence they were inviting into their own lives. I think the U.S. as a republic might not have survived had that bullet hit Trump, landed on its intended target, and heaven forbid Trump would have died. That is a scenario that is very, very scary to model. We live in flyover country, and we jokingly say, Bubba's mad, and Bubba owns a lot of guns. And who knows what Bubba's response would have been to seeing Trump being assassinated on live television. We're no fans of Trump per se. We're more agnostic. We understand why people project onto him the things that they do. And for a great many people, he is rightly or wrongly viewed as the last great hope for the republic. And if that hope would have been murdered on CNN on a Saturday afternoon, who knows what would have evolved. And then subsequent to that, we had what is just objectively a coup take place. President Joe Biden, and his inner circle did not want to pull out of the presidential race. And if you believe Seymour Hersh's reporting, and I'm not saying necessarily that we do, although it does seem rather plausible, apparently former President Obama informed the Bidens that Kamala Harris and he would support a invoking of the 25th Amendment if he didn't drop out of the race, which is an odd thing because the 25th Amendment would have removed him from the presidency, but would have left him still the candidate. And there was a scenario where if he was subject to removal from office because he is obviously and undeniably cognitively incapable of being the president, he could have still ran, which would have been the worst case scenario for the Democrats. But instead, we have the polar opposite of the intent of that phone call, which is he has dropped out of the race, but he still gets to be president. And so if his mental state was such that Obama and many in his cabinet thought that the 25th Amendment was applicable, then why is it not applicable now just because he's not running? And then we've seen this, let's call it what it is, media love fest for Kamala Harris and Trump being wiped off the news and his, the attempt on his life being shoved down the memory hole. I think the same forces that conspired to eject Biden from the ticket and had to settle with Kamala for a variety of reasons are going to go full steam ahead with all of their power to make sure that Orange Man stays out of the White House. And I had been warning some of my friends on the right that their celebrations about Trump's certainty to ascend back to the presidency were premature at best. And there's a long way to go between here in November. Now, we'll see. Apparently, they're going to debate. And Kamala Harris, we've seen over the past few years, is distinctly different than the one that is being portrayed by the mass media. And maybe much like Biden's debate performance, we get to see what's really going on. But the country is in a very dangerous place. I think you and I had discussed on prior appearances that it was difficult to see a peaceful November into December. And we're seeing now just how hard that might be. Like the same people that think the Trump assassination was an inside job believe that if Trump loses, the election will have been stolen from him. And the people who were cheering for the assassination to have been successful and bemoaning the miss aren't just going to accept a Trump victory and do nothing. And so I wish I had a more optimistic outlook and summary of the current political situation in the US, but I'm hard pressed to find one.
It's really eye-opening in a lot of respects, especially how we've seen the media react to everything from when we had the debate and Biden did such a terrible job and they seemed shocked that he did when I watched the debate and was like, that it's pretty much as good as I thought it would be because the media had been lying about Biden's condition before then. And then, they all go against Biden and, he steps down or whatever happened there. And then they call him a hero. Right. And then now they're calling Kamala Harris this amazing candidate when just, weeks before they were concerned about whether she was competent or would be a strong enough candidate even to defeat Trump and just the whole back and forth and just it's like, how can anybody at this time even take the media seriously? Because it's just so obvious that they're just trying to promote the Democratic candidate rather than actually tell the truth.
So on the one hand, that's very bullish Doomberg, and that we take solace in the fact that whatever we write, at least our audience who pays our bills, understands that we are writing from an authentic basis. And it is our best effort to describe the truth as we understand it based on facts and data. And we share our homework. And all of that is missing from the media, both sides, I would say. I mean, I don't want to just be like whataboutism. But the strongest of the Trump supporters are in many ways sort of just as blind to some of the shortcomings of their candidate as the media is blind to Biden and now to Harris. And I should say, with some personal experience in both Parkinson's and dementia, late stage dementia in my family and amongst one of my close friends that I used to work with, it's very clear to me what was going on before the 2020 election. And you could see the progression. And I don't say this lightly, and it's typically not ethical to diagnose from a distance, but it's not like we haven't been lied to for years. So I kind of feel like we all get a pass to speculate on this one. And it is the presidency, after all, allegedly the keeper of the nuclear codes. Anybody who has lost a family member to Parkinson's or dementia as a part of late stage Parkinson's knows what's going on. It's very clear what's going on. And the slope of the demise from here is typically rather steep. And so I do believe that the debate was rushed and moved up to June, which is the earliest first presidential debate ever. And neither candidate had been officially nominated by their parties, by the way, before this debate was scheduled. And there were many, many people on social media saying in advance that this was part of the coup against Joe Biden to come clean with the public, have Joe give such a terrible performance that there would be no choice but to remove him from the ticket because they knew they couldn't fake it till November. And as a scientist, that's a hypothesis that fits the data very well. And so the real scandal here is that he is still the president. That's one. That's the most urgent. We have two active wars going on where the U.S. is at a minimum a proxy participant. The other side of those wars would say the U.S. is a direct participant already. And we have a president that the rest of the world knows is incompetent, mentally unsuited to remain in office. Nobody actually knows who's running the country, which is a dangerous place to be because somebody might decide it's time to preempt. Either the occupant of the Oval Office really, really matters a lot, or it doesn't. And I think we've all grown up under the assumption that it matters an enormous amount, especially given the amount of time and mental attention we expend on campaigns to decide who will occupy it. And so Joe Biden has no business being president today. If he can't run, he can't serve. And if he can't serve, it has to have been clear to many people that he couldn't serve for a very long time. And that is a historic scandal of epic proportions. And we've just ignored it. We've just moved on. It's all Kamala all the time. And Biden is putting out proposals to reform the Supreme Court and impose age limitations, or it's just, what are we doing? This man is not president. Who is president? We either we're a democracy and we're owed the answers to such questions, or we're not a democracy. And who could argue, given the fact set that you and I have just covered, that we're a democracy today?
Now, how do you see all of this impacting energy prices and also the economy? Because as we've noted, it seemed like for a while there, Trump was the clear front runner. Now, if you look at the betting markets, for example, it's about almost 50-50 chance for Kamala Harris and Trump. And I know there is one professor, Alan Lichtman, who's predicted pretty much all of the last presidential elections since the 80s. The clear front runner seems to be Harris, and a lot would have to go wrong for her to lose. So if we do see Kamala Harris become president, what does that look like? What kind of difference does that make energy-wise and also for the economy versus if Trump were to become president?
So there's two dimensions to this answer. There's the we're not going to get into World War III answer, which is sort of the base assumptions that we have about how energy prices do under Democratic versus Republican presidents. And then there's the added dimension of all of this could be wrong if the world descends into a nuclear war. So assuming that we don't end up in a kinetic conflict with Russia and that this latest behavior and activity in the Middle East doesn't result in an open conflict between Iran and the U.S. Vis-a-vis Israel. Broadly speaking, Democratic presidents are bullish for energy prices and Republican presidents are bearish for energy prices. And this is actually counterintuitive for most people. The reason why Democrats are bullish for energy prices is because they are pro-regulation, and regulation crimps production, and production is the key input into price. And so if you don't have enough production, the price elasticity demand is such that oil and natural gas and coal do better, all things being equal, under Democratic presidents, because the industry has shown no track record of being able to discipline itself and to impose any kinds of limitations around overproduction and overinvesting. Drillers know how to drill, and diggers know how to dig. And when you own a tractor, all you know is how to dig. And so coal miners will mine coal, and they'll take the price. And when you have a Republican in the Oval Office, generally speaking, the regulatory burden lightens, and makes it easier for the incremental marginal supply to come online, and that generally leads to more bearish prices. Now, overriding all of that sort of traditional macroeconomic analysis, which itself is perhaps counterintuitive to some of your listeners, is the sort of neocon versus Trump election, because that's what this is. I mean, let's be clear. Lindsey Graham would rather have Kamala Harris win than Donald Trump. Like, Lindsey Graham wants war, and Donald Trump has run on a campaign of peace, even though I think his plans to achieve it are wholly unrealistic. At least he's saying it. And Kamala Harris would just be overrun by the military-industrial complex, and we'd end up with more war. And so if war escalates beyond a certain point, all bets are off for traditional energy analysis. And you could see $150, $200 oil and $5,000 gold and all of those things that come with a true catastrophe on the geopolitical front. And so I don't know what the answer is, which is not a cop-out. It's a confession. I think all things being equal, Harris is bullish for energy prices and Trump is bearish. But I think we're far more likely to get entangled in far more wars under Harris than we are Trump. And the fact that we had basically no new entanglements during Trump's 4 years in office is pretty strong evidence to that effect.
Now, with respect to the precious metal markets as well, if we could get an update on that. Obviously, we've had a bit of a volatility here in the last few weeks or so. But with regard to who becomes president, do you see any difference there? Obviously, if Harris becomes president, maybe more geopolitical conflicts versus Trump, which would push gold higher. But your take on that?
I think you're mostly right. I think if Harris wins, I think the efforts of the BRICS countries will accelerate. The bifurcation of the world between the Atlanticists and the BRICS nations will harden. And since the BRICS countries have openly stated that gold will be the neutral reserve asset in their half of the world, the US dollar price of gold has to go higher. Now, again, I should say with a disclaimer, we're not gold investors. We own an enormous amount of gold. I personally own an uncomfortable amount of gold. We use gold as a savings vehicle and as a hedge. And the last thing I want is to wake up tomorrow and see gold at $5,000 an ounce. I don't need that kind of confirmation that I was right to prepare. You don't prepare in the hopes that you get to use those preps. You prepare in the hopes that you never have to use those preps. And but I own an uncomfortable amount of gold because I see the political risk, and I'd like to do whatever I can do to hedge against it for me and my family. So I don't follow the price of gold on a day-to-day basis. I measure my savings in acres and ounces, and unless the land I own gets nuked, it's not going anywhere. They're not making more of it, and gold is, as you know, the oldest and purest form of money. And so I would be bullish the dollar price of oil only because I'm bearish the geopolitical risks that are on the board today. And so that's not a happy statement, and that's not an endorsement that people should go buy gold. I own the amount of gold that is appropriate for me given my portfolio and the amount of risk I'm looking to hedge.
No, it seems like in recent weeks, we've seen actually a good amount of strength in the gold price. Your perspective on that, but we haven't seen a huge pullback. And right now, as we speak, it's still above 2,400. What do you think are some of the reasons for this apparent strength in precious metals?
I have two words for you, Japanese yen. So the Japanese are embarking upon a substantial change in the manner in which they have managed their currency and interest rates for the past few decades. And I think via mechanisms that I don't quite fully understand, but I have an intuitive feel for, this has to be bullish for gold. And so if you just plot the movement of the yen with the movement of gold, because it is not the China Shanghai premium anymore. That premium has mostly dissipated, and the Chinese central bank, if you believe the public pronouncements, has not really been a major buyer the past few months. And so something is amiss. Japan is undergoing a historic change. And the strength of gold in the face of the geopolitical risk and what's going on in Japan feels right, even if I can't fully explain it. And so when I woke up this morning and I saw the yen was below 150, I wasn't surprised to see that gold was back above, 2,400 comfortably. Somebody smarter and more knowledgeable about the nuances of international currency and movements and how they impact gold, I'm sure could fill in the blanks. But we have sort of a mental model right now that what's going on in Japan is bullish for gold.
All right. And if our viewers are interested in learning more, they can go to Doomberg.com. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, everything we do is at Doomberg.com. All of our pieces, we have a pro tier, which has had a bit of a nice run lately. We've been sending previews of our presentations to all of our paid subscribers, which has sparked some interest in the pro tier. So for our regular subscribers, you get 7 or 8 articles a month. And then for our pro tier, you get those plus a full presentation that we put a lot of work into and deliver via the Substack platform to our pro tier. And we list all of our podcast appearances there as well. And so you can find everything by going to Doomberg.com.
Fantastic. Doomberg, really appreciate your time today. Any last thoughts before we let you go?
No, it's great to catch up. It is a scary time. I wish we had happier things to talk about, and may we one day be blessed enough to have something to celebrate as opposed to bemoan.
Sounds good, Doomberg. Thank you so much for your time, and God bless.
Same to you.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for July 29th through August 5th, 2024, while supplies last. First, we feature Dealer's Choice Constitutional Silver Dimes, quarters, and half dollars at $2.50 over spot per ounce. We also have 1 ounce gold backdated Canadian maples at $65 over spot. Next, we have a limited quantity of 1 ounce silver full color Trump Fight for America bars at $6 over spot. They come 22 a sheet and so have a minimum order of 20. And finally, we have 1 10th ounce gold backdated American Eagles at $39 over melt per coin. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.